Right now, as you watch this, around 10,000 aircraft are in the sky. Millions of people every day crossing oceans at 500 miles an hour, 7 miles up, in a comfort that would have looked like sorcery a century ago. The jet engine shrank the whole planet. It turned the ocean into an afternoon. And it came in very large part from the mind of one short, stubborn, working-class boy from Coventry, the son of a mechanic, who sketched the future of flight while the rest of aviation was still bolting propellers to the front of aeroplanes. His name was Frank Whittle. But this is not simply the story of a great British invention. If it were, it would be a happy story, and it isn't. This is the story of something Britain does again and again, and it's worth saying plainly right at the start because it's the whole point. Britain invented the jet engine. Britain got there first, years before anyone. And then Britain fumbled that lead, gave the technology to its allies and, through sheer carelessness, its enemies, sidelined the man who created it, took over his company for almost nothing, and quietly collected a fortune from his patents while handing him a fraction of what it was all worth. Britain gained the jet age. It just never worked out how to keep the advantage, or how to reward the genius who gave it away. In 1935, this man, whose idea would build a global industry worth, in time, hundreds of billions, could not find £5. £5. The fee to renew the patent on his jet engine. He couldn't pay it. His own government's air ministry wouldn't lend it to him, and so the patent lapsed. Britain's most important invention of the century fell into the public domain, read, as it happened, by German engineers, for the price of a few good dinners. That's the story we're going to tell in full. Not the tidy hero's tale where the genius is doubted, then triumphs, then gets his knighthood and everyone claps. The real story is stranger, richer, and far more revealing about how this country treats the people who hand it the future. So let's go back to the beginning, to a workshop floor in Coventry. Frank Whittle was born in 1907 in a terraced house in Earlsdon, Coventry, right at the beating heart of British engineering, the city of bicycles and cars and machine tools. And he was born into the smell of oil and metal. His father, Moses, was a self-made man who'd left school at 11 to work in a Lancashire cotton mill and clawed his way up to owning a small engineering firm in Leamington Spa, the Leamington Valve and Piston Ring Company. And this is where the story really begins, not in a laboratory, but on a workshop floor. Because young Frank Whittle didn't play with toys, he played with lathes. He grew up in his father's workshop, turning metal, learning in his hands the thing no university could teach, the feel of a component machined to perfection, the difference a thousandth of an inch makes, the quiet discipline that machines only work when the people making them refuse to be sloppy. That workshop was his childhood. And while his school teachers thought him lazy and unremarkable, the truth was that Frank was elsewhere, in the local library, devouring everything he could find on aircraft, on engines, on the physics of flight. A working-class boy in the 1920s, teaching himself to dream in aeronautics. He had one overwhelming ambition: to fly. And here he hit the first of the walls that would define his whole life. He applied to join the RAF as an apprentice and was rejected. Too short, too slight. His physique wasn't up to it. For most boys, that's the end of the dream. Not for Whittle. He threw himself into a punishing regime of exercise and diet, built himself up and applied again. Rejected again, and told not to reapply. So he did something audacious. He applied a third time under a fresh start and got in. Sheer, stubborn, almost superhuman persistence against an establishment that kept telling him no. Remember that pattern, because the establishment was going to keep telling him no for the next 20 years, and he was going to keep being right. Whittle didn't just scrape into the RAF, he shone. His brilliance as an apprentice earned him a place at the Officer Training College at Cranwell, where his instructors were astonished by his gift for mathematics and for building models. And it was there, at Cranwell, as a young cadet of 21, that Frank Whittle sat down to write a routine end-of-course thesis, and, almost casually, sketched out the future of human flight. The thesis was about the future of aircraft design, and Whittle's central insight was devastatingly simple and devastatingly correct. If you wanted to fly faster and higher than anyone ever had, and he was certain that was the future, then the propeller and the piston engine were a dead end. Up high, where the air is thin, propellers become hopelessly inefficient. To conquer speed and altitude, he argued, you needed an entirely new kind of propulsion, and he had the answer. Instead of a piston engine turning a propeller, you'd use a gas turbine. Suck air in at the front, compress it hard, mix it with fuel and burn it, and blast the roaring exhaust out of the back. The machine would be hurled forward by its own jet of hot gas. No propeller at all. It was elegant, it was radical, and, this is the crucial part, it was buildable, if only someone would fund it. He worked out the fundamental concept of the turbojet as a young officer in his early 20s, years before anyone else in the world made it fly. In January 1930, encouraged by a fellow officer, Whittle took out a patent on the design. And now we reach the first great institutional failure, because Whittle, being RAF, had to show his idea to the Air Ministry. And the Air Ministry looked at the blueprint for the engine that would define the coming century and dismissed it. Impractical, not worth pursuing. And here's a detail the usual telling skates over, because the man who did most to kill Whittle's idea may not have been a neutral judge. The Air Ministry leaned heavily on the opinion of one of its scientific advisors, a brilliant engineer named A. Griffith. Griffith looked at Whittle's engine and pronounced it impractical. But Griffith, by some accounts, had his own agenda. He was pursuing his own gas turbine concept, a rival approach, and had every reason not to hand a young, unknown officer the credit or the funding for cracking the problem first. Whether it was honest skepticism or quiet self-interest, the effect was the same. The one man senior enough to champion Whittle instead buried him, and the ministry lost interest. The Air Ministry decided Whittle's idea was worthless. They didn't bother to classify it as secret. Why stamp secret on something that will never work? So Whittle's patent was published, openly. Copies were bought by, among others, the German Trade Commission in London and circulated to German aircraft engineers and research establishments. Britain's Air Ministry had looked at the future, called it nonsense, and handed the blueprint to the one nation Britain would be at war with within a decade. The indifference wasn't just a missed opportunity, it was a gift to the enemy. And it got worse. With no official interest, no funding, and a young family to support on a modest officer's salary, Frank Whittle, the man holding the patent to the jet engine, simply ran out of money. In 1935, the patent came up for renewal. The fee was about £5. He couldn't pay it. He asked the Air Ministry to cover it. They declined. And so the patent lapsed. The most valuable idea in the history of British aviation was released into the world, unprotected, because its inventor couldn't find a £5 note. And here the story turns, because Frank Whittle would not let go. Just as the patent lapsed, two former RAF men, Rolf Dudley Williams and James Tinling, came to him with a proposition. They believed in the engine. They'd helped raise the money to actually build it, and in 1936, the three of them, with the help of an investment bank and a modest £2,000 loan, formed a tiny company with one of the great optimistic names in British history, Power Jets Limited. Think about the scale of what they were attempting against what they had. This little startup, with almost no money, was trying to build a completely new kind of engine, the thing the entire British aviation establishment had said couldn't be done. Whittle held only a minority stake in his own invention. They had no factory of their own, so they partnered with a steam turbine firm, British Thomson Houston, and set up in a works in Rugby. And there, on a shoestring, fueled by Whittle's ferocious will, they built the impossible thing. On the 12th of April 1937, Frank Whittle ran the first jet engine, and it was terrifying. The machine screamed up out of control, faster and faster, and the engineers scattered, diving for cover behind benches as this shrieking contraption threatened to tear itself apart. But it ran. For the first time in Britain, a jet engine had run. The thing the establishment said was impossible was sitting there, howling, in a factory in Rugby. Success on a shoestring has a price, and Frank Whittle paid it with his body. Powerjets was permanently on the edge of running out of money. Every test cost money they didn't have. Every setback threatened to close them down. And Whittle drove himself into the ground, trying to hold it all together. 16-hour days, obsessive, sleepless. He began taking benzodrine and amphetamine to keep going, and sleeping pills to come down. His weight fell to 9 stone. He developed heart palpitations, eczema, and an explosive temper that alarmed his colleagues. And the bitter part? The closer he got to success, the more the establishment that had ignored him would begin to circle. Not to help him, but to take it away. What finally changed everything was the thing that changes everything: war. As the 1930s ended and war with Germany loomed, and as rumours grew that the Germans were working on their own jet, the Air Ministry suddenly, belatedly, discovered that Frank Whittle might be onto something after all. In June 1939, an official watched Whittle run his reconstructed engines smoothly for 20 minutes, and walked out converted. Now the money came. Contracts were signed. The ministry ordered a flyable engine and commissioned a small aircraft company, Gloucester, to build a simple aeroplane to test it, the Gloucester E-28/39. And so we come to the moment. The evening of the 15th of May, 1941, an airfield at Cranwell. The light fading, the wind blustery. A small, unremarkable-looking aeroplane sits on the runway, but with no propeller. The test pilot, Jerry Sayer, opens it up, and the E-28/39 rolls forward with a sound no British aircraft had ever made. Not the drone of a propeller, but a rising, unearthly shriek. And then it lifts into the air. Britain's first jet flight. It flew for 17 minutes, and in the days that followed, reached around 370 miles an hour. Faster than a Spitfire, faster than any propeller fighter in the sky. When it landed, Whittle's old friend Pat Johnson, one of the few who'd believed from the very start, turned to him and said just 3 words. "Frank, it flies." 15 years of rejection, of poverty, of obstruction, of near breakdown, and it flew. The jet age had begun, on a British airfield, with a British engine, designed by a man his own country had turned away 3 times. It should have been the beginning of a fortune. It was, instead, the beginning of the end, for Whittle. Because now that the engine worked, now that it was obviously the future, the very fact that it was so valuable meant Frank Whittle was about to lose control of it. The triumph at Cranwell didn't secure his reward. It signed away his claim to it. And the first people to take a piece were supposed to be on his side. To mass-produce the engine for the war, Whittle's tiny power jets couldn't do it alone. So the ministry brought in a big industrial partner, the car maker Rover. And on paper, that was sensible. Rover had factories, workers, production know-how. In practice, it became one of the most bitter episodes of Whittle's life, because Rover and Whittle did not get on. Whittle, the perfectionist inventor, felt Rover couldn't deliver production quality parts and kept getting his design wrong. Rover, for its part, was tired of the delays and what it saw as constant harassment from Whittle's team. And then Whittle discovered something that felt like outright treachery. Behind his back, in a separate mill near their factory, a team of Rover engineers had been secretly redesigning his engine. Whittle accused Rover of tampering with his engine to get around his petitions and claim the design as their own. Whatever the rights and wrongs, and there were faults on both sides, the man who invented the thing was now watching a car company quietly rework it without telling him. And then came one of the strangest deals in British industrial history, the moment the jet engine changed hands over dinner. By late 1942, the Rover arrangement was clearly broken, and the ministry wanted it fixed. Enter Rolls-Royce and its formidable boss, Ernest Hives. In December 1942, in a hotel in the little town of Clitheroe, the Swan and Royal, over what was later described as a 5-shilling meal, Hives and his brilliant engineer Stanley Hooker sat down with Spencer Wilkes of Rover and struck a bargain. Rolls-Royce would take over the whole jet engine operation, and in exchange, this is the part that sounds made up but is entirely true, Rover would get Rolls-Royce's factory that was building tank engines. They swapped a jet engine factory for a tank engine factory over a cheap dinner in a Lancashire pub. Frank Whittle's world-changing invention traded like a couple of football players. And notice who wasn't at that table. The man who invented the engine had no say in the deal that decided its future. While all that was happening at home, Britain was also giving the engine away abroad, deliberately. In 1941, with the country fearing invasion, a decision was taken to share the jet with its great ally in waiting, the United States. Whittle's W1X engine and the plans for the more powerful W2B were shipped across the Atlantic to the General Electric Company, a firm perfectly placed to build them since it already made turbochargers. Whittle himself travelled to America in 1942 to help GE get it working, and they did fast. A combination of Whittle's engine and a Bell airframe flew as the Bell XP-59A Aerocomet in the autumn of 1942, actually beating Britain's own Meteor fighter into the air. In handing GE that engine, Britain quite literally helped found the American jet industry, the industry that would go on to dominate the skies and earn over the decades sums that make the word fortune look small. Now, in fairness, this was wartime, and sharing technology with your closest ally to win a war against Nazi Germany is entirely defensible. Nobody should pretend otherwise. But nobody should pretend either that Britain kept the commercial prize. It gave the seed corn to the country that would grow the biggest harvest. And crucially, Whittle himself had no ownership stake to protect by then, so as GE and later America's whole aviation industry built on his work, not a penny of the long-term reward flowed back to the man whose idea it was. And here's the twist that makes the next act so painful. In April 1943, Whittle demonstrated his jet to Winston Churchill himself. And at that demonstration, riding high, idealistic, exhausted, and genuinely believing it was the right thing for the country, Frank Whittle personally proposed to the minister, Stafford Cripps, that all jet development should be nationalised, taken into public ownership for the good of Britain. Read that again. The nationalisation that would go on to break him, to cost him his company and most of his reward, was an idea he himself put on the table. He handed them the knife. He just never imagined they'd use it on him. In 1944, the British government nationalised power jets, and the way it was done was, frankly, shameful, even if the seed of the idea had been Whittle's own. The Treasury decided what power jets was worth. After haggling and after refusing to let the matter go to independent arbitration, the government paid a total of £135,500 for the company that owned the jet engine. Now watch where that money went. Frank Whittle, the inventor, the driving force, the man whose name was on the patent, had, in an act of almost painful idealism, already offered to surrender his own shares for nothing. He was a serving officer. He felt he shouldn't personally profit from public work. So when the payout came, Whittle initially received nothing at all. His co-founders, Williams and Tinling, each received nearly £47,000 for their stock. And the man who'd invented the thing, who'd wrecked his health building it, got, at first, nothing. He was later handed a token £10,000. £10,000 for the jet engine. Whittle went to see Cripps personally to object to how it was all being handled. It made no difference. And nationalisation didn't just cost him money, it destroyed what he'd built. His talented team was scattered. Powerjets was merged into a state research body and, crucially, barred from actually designing and building engines, the very thing it existed to do. Whittle argued, with real justification, that this set back Britain's entire post-war jet industry, throwing away hard-won leads, and the strain brought on a second nervous breakdown. He'd had the first in 1940, building the engine. The second came watching the state take it away. In 1946, disillusioned and broken, he resigned. By the end of 1947, the British government had done rather well out of the jet engine. It had recouped its costs, and it had set up an arrangement whereby, in return for letting Rolls-Royce and de Havilland use the Whittle patents it had acquired when it nationalised power jets, the Treasury took a 5% commission on every jet engine those firms sold overseas. By the end of 1947, that commission was bringing the Treasury around £300,000 a year. Let that land. The British state was earning £300,000 a year off Whittle's patents, while Whittle himself had been paid £10,000 once for the company those patents came from. The government was collecting a running fortune from the invention. The inventor was collecting a pension and his health problems. There was, eventually, a kind of reckoning. In 1948, the Royal Commission on Awards to Inventors granted Frank Whittle a tax-free award of £100,000 in recognition of what he'd given the country. A large sum in 1948, a life-changing sum even. And it's the number the tidy version of this story likes to end on. See, he was rewarded after all. But set it against the scale of what he'd created. One aviation historian put it perfectly. It was a pittance, next to the billion-dollar industry that grew from his invention. £100,000 once for the man who fathered the jet age, while entire nations and corporations built their fortunes on his idea, and while, as we just saw, his own government was quietly pocketing £300,000 a year from his patents alone. The award wasn't the system putting things right, it was the system's conscience money. That same year, exhausted and unwell, having broken down again on a lecture tour in America, he was knighted and retired from the RAF on grounds of ill health. Sir Frank Whittle, honoured at last and quietly, thoroughly worn out. Now, it's important to be fair and accurate, because there's a myth to puncture on both sides. Frank Whittle did not invent the jet in a vacuum. In Germany, quite independently, a young physicist named Hans von Ohain was chasing the same idea. And here's the sting. Because of Britain's fumbling, von Ohain's engine actually flew first, powering a Heinkel aircraft in August 1939, nearly 2 years before the Gloucester flew. Germany, partly thanks to reading Whittle's published unprotected patent, and partly through its own brilliance, got a jet into the air first, and later fielded the Messerschmitt 262, a jet fighter genuinely ahead of anything the Allies had. So this isn't a simple tale of British triumph. In many ways, it's a story of a British head start squandered. Whittle had the concept years before anyone. Had he been backed in 1930 or even 1935, Britain could have had operational jets before the war even began. A staggering thought that might have changed the whole shape of the conflict. Instead, the indifference, the lapsed patent, the shoestring years, the secret redesign, the pub swap, the nationalisation. Britain fumbled a lead it should never have lost. And here's the grace note in all of it. Whittle and von Ohain, the two men who, unknown to each other, invented the same world-changing thing on opposite sides of a war, later became genuine friends. In America, in their later years, the Englishman and the German gave joint lectures, each generous about the other. Von Ohain said, straight out, that if Whittle had been properly refunded, Britain would have had the jet first, and there might have been no German jet at all, because the war might have taken a different course entirely. The rivals at the end agreed. Britain had the future in its hands earlier than anyone, and let it slip. And commercially, the pattern held to the end. Whittle's engine, in Rolls-Royce's hands, became the Welland, then the Derwent, which pushed a Meteor to a world airspeed record of over 600 miles an hour in 1945. It led to the Rolls-Royce Avon, which powered the de Havilland Comet, the world's first jet airliner. So Britain did build one world-beating jet company. That much of the harvest it kept. But the vast, sprawling global jet industry, the one worth those hundreds of billions, was led, in the end, from America, on foundations that included the very engine Britain shipped to General Electric in 1941. Britain invented the future, kept a slice, and watched most of the profit fly away. Frank Whittle lived on for half a century after that first flight. He advised, he wrote his memoirs, and in 1976, his first marriage over, his health fragile, he emigrated to the United States, taught at the US Naval Academy, and, in that lovely twist, grew close to von Ohain. He died in Columbia, Maryland in 1996 of lung cancer at 89. His ashes were flown home to England, to Cranwell, where his engine had first taken to the sky. In 2002, the British public voted him number 42 in the poll of the 100 Greatest Britons. 42, below a good many people who never changed the world at all. It's hard not to feel that number, too, is a quiet verdict on how Britain remembers the man who gave it the jet age. So what's the real lesson of Frank Whittle? And why does it matter now, not just as history? It's not that Britain can't invent. Plainly, magnificently, it can. Whittle proved this small country can produce world-changing genius from a workshop floor in Coventry. The lesson is about what happens next, and it is a lesson Britain arguably still hasn't learned. Because the Whittle pattern didn't die in 1948. Ask yourself how many times since then a British breakthrough in computing, in biotech, in graphene, in artificial intelligence has been invented here, underfunded here, and then scaled, owned, and monetized somewhere else. The country that gave the world the jet engine, the structure of DNA, and the first programmable computer has a long, quiet history of inventing the future and letting someone else keep it. Whittle isn't just a hero from the past, he's a warning that keeps coming true. He gave his country the sky, His country gave him a knighthood, £100,000, and 42nd place. The jet engine shrank the whole world. Every time you board a plane, you are sitting inside Frank Whittle's idea. He collapsed the oceans, folded up the distances, changed what it means to be alive on this planet. He just never got to keep any of it. That's the story this channel exists to tell. The great British genius that was built up and given away. Britain has always known how to invent the future. What it has never quite learned is how to reward the people who hand it over, or how to hold on to the prize. If a Whittle appeared tomorrow in a workshop somewhere in Britain with the next world-changing idea, do you think this time we'd know how to keep it? Tell us in the comments. Subscribe and we'll see you on the next one.